My nature of material final model is an abstract depiction of the Eames house, located in Pacific Palisades, California, just north of LA, designed by Charles and Ray Eames, built from 1945 through 1949. The couple, Ray and Charles Eames, designed this house shortly after World War II. As a result of World War II ending, there was an influx of people coming back from war, specifically young men. There was not enough housing for everyone coming back. They wanted houses built, especially since all these men were coming home. They needed homes built. That being said, nothing really was built for years due to World War II, which was the reason why Charles and Ray Eames designed the Eames house, because it was incorporating their ideas. It was a function that would serve as a studio and living and workspace. The idea behind the design was that they wanted something that would fit the multi-purpose design. Charles and Ray Eames designed this building having the intention to connect the outdoor of the house to the outside, but also focusing on the sunlight. My small-scale model incorporates many of the concepts Charles and Ray Eames had based on the Eames house. These concepts are how the building connects with nature, the use of mass-produced materials. In my first design, I wanted to incorporate the connecting with nature concept into the design, but it was too simple. I needed to express various concepts in my design, not just one. I had trouble designing it based on my concept nature, using all the materials. Upon observation and constructive feedback, I analyzed my small-scale model and had the appropriate materials, but I had to incorporate it into a different way, trying not to make anything architecturally. I wanted a way to experience nature, coming back to my concept, but without being literal. Based on my revisions from my small-scale model, it led me to create my final design model based on the following concepts. These concepts were how the building connects with nature, the use of mass-produced materials, wood, concrete, glass, metal, the design of being like a kit of parts, and has a module grid/plan. Number 1. The usage of mass-produced materials. I use concrete pavers as the base as support to represent the mass-produced material. That was an easy, accessible material. Since concrete is heavy, I put it as the base. It would also help me get the shape I wanted, which was in a stubby L. I also used wood to get the idea of mass-produced material, which was the idea around the Eames house. They got materials that were mass-produced and easy to get to design. 2. Connecting with nature. I wanted a way for it to connect with nature since the building is surrounded by trees and grass and shrubs. These elements are nature, which is why as my material wood, I used 3-foot-high wooden trims and randomly scattered them around. The wooden trims represent trees, and the reason why I put them scattered is because trees are never in a certain form or shape, which is why the way I have the trees, it creates the idea of isolation, like a cage keeping everything in, which is why I made 2 trees in the middle leaning on each other to show that it's nature and trees are not the perfect shape, because trees block off sunlight but also let it through. This ties back to the idea that the plywood panels and glass panels on the exterior facade. Another way I incorporated the wood was in actual wood chips. The reason for the color red wood chips was to make it stand out as a bright, vivid color, like the Eames house does, because of the usage of the colorful plywood panels on the facade. I wanted the viewers to get the idea that having the wood chips represent nature. I also used a wooden panel on the floor to correspond to the wood chips, signifying that there is basically no inside or out. I wanted it to flow, like the idea of the Eames house with all the windows. It lets lots of sunlight, having all the glass on the exterior wall. Next, I put the plexiglass to represent actual glass, making it connect with nature. The reason why I put it on the ground was because I wanted it to flow with the trees. And what I mean by that is that trees block sunlight but also let sunlight through, which is why I put it near the falling trees to show that the trees are nature and what the trees do when it comes to the Eames building, which let sunlight in but also distorted at times. That's the reason for the random formation of the trees. The next concept I represent in my panel is the modularity of the form and plan. I use the metal on the floor as a way to give into perspective that it has a module grid to it. I use a metal chicken wire, which is also a mass-produced material connecting to the Eames house, but it has a very modular form. The last concept demonstrated in this is that the overall design is like a kit of parts. You can shape it differently, and it will be the same concept, which is why I took it apart and rearranged it like this differently, and it fits together. What I learned that the plexiglass is really hard to cut through, and it is hard to use to your advantage. I used everything. I did not drill anything down. I wanted to give it a very natural look to it. The way I used the metal on the floor, I was going to use it on the top and put the glass on top, but I didn't want to give it a wall look like the Eames building, which is why I use it as a modular grid on the floor. I also used the wood chips and the plywood on the floor. I noticed that it was pretty easy to cut, and I used it to my advantage to give it look that natural look, and also